So, hello everybody, and welcome to the first in a series of Nature Writing Hours workshops. It's very exciting for me. This is a new project, so I'm delighted to see you all here. For some of the names I know, you've been on workshops of mine previously, so it's good to see you again. But for those of you who don't know me, my name's Amanda Tuke. I'm a nature writer. I write primarily for Birdwatching magazine, but I've also written for BBC Countryfile and other magazines. I'm also a botanist and a birder, and I'm based in suburban South London. But before we start the workshop itself, just a bit of housekeeping. For those of you who use it, I've enabled the transcription, the live transcription, so you'll be able to connect into that. At the moment, you're all muted, but you do have the facility to unmute yourselves. But all I would say is while we're doing the writing exercises, if you could please keep yourselves muted. Otherwise, we get lots of page turning noises, which can be quite entertaining. And if you did have any questions while we're doing the exercises, if you pop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to work my way through them and answer those. So we are going to do some have a go at having a discussion at various points. And what I would say is it's usually works best if people use in the reactions if you do the hand up. I know it feels a bit like school, but if you do the hand up, then I can make sure we can hear from as many different people as possible. And obviously, please keep your points brief so that, once again, as many people can have their say as possible. So, what are we going to do today? Well, this is the plan. We're going to pack some things in, but hopefully still keep it feeling fairly relaxed. We're going to do 3 different writing exercises, sort of short writing exercises, and the sort of outcome of all of that will be something close to being a 50-word piece of what I call thumbnail nature, so a shortish piece of nature writing, and therefore one that you can achieve in a workshop. I'm going to read to you some short pieces of writing about beauty in nature, which is the theme of today's workshop. I'm going to raise a issue with you, which I'd like to hear your views on it, to do with nature writing. And then towards the end of the session, if you feel up for sharing some of the writing that you've been doing in the session, I mean, obviously it's entirely voluntary, but if you'd like to, then it would be fantastic to hear from some people. So, and there will be some what I'll call takeaways, so things to do and think about after the session. So that's the plan for today. So with no further ado, let's get straight into doing some writing. So obviously it's entirely up to you whether you want to write on screen or you're more comfortable writing on a piece of paper, so in which case grab a piece of paper if you've not got one already. So this is just a gentle warm-up. Beauty is what we're going to be thinking about today and how you express beauty. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to find beauty in an object that you can see right now in the room you're sitting in. Ideally an inside object, just because we're going to do lots of nature, but it could be anything, and ideally something that wouldn't normally be thought of as beautiful. So I'm going to encourage you to write extravagantly and passionately about it without editing. And I have to confess, part of the inspiration for this is I've been revisiting the series of Montalbano. And I don't know if you've watched any Montalbano, their ability to be exuberant about any subject is just fantastic. So it's sort of inspired this. We're going to have about 5 minutes to work on that. So I'm going to ask you to start that exercise around now, and I'll let you know when we're getting close to the end. So I'm going to mute myself and work on it too. So here we go. So you have about a minute left. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too horrible to do. It's the idea of things like that is it's a bit of fun, but also it just gets your writing muscles sort of working on something that doesn't feel too critical. And if you needed anything to prove that sharing passion could be compelling, I don't know if you've come across Francis Bourgeois. So has become a TikTok star celebrity. He makes videos about himself getting very excited about seeing trains, and it is honestly, I didn't think I was interested in trains at all, but I'm definitely much more interested now. So he's absolutely brilliant, and proves that you can get very excited and be passionate about anything and share that with other people. So let's move on. So one of the wonderful things about doing workshops like this is that I get to share some writing that inspires me, that I found. So on the theme of the workshop about beauty, nature writing obviously doesn't have to be about beauty, but when it is, I strongly believe that balance is everything. So it's getting that balance between absolutely being passionate about something, but keeping the kind of crispness and preciseness in your language as well. And I think the people whose writing I've included here do that really well. Just before I read them to you, I've deliberately tried to pick things that are quite different. So when I talk about thumbnail nature, which is the idea of these 50-word max pieces of writing, they can be poetry, they can be prose, they can be prose poems, they can be irreverent, they can be very serious and earnest, so they can be completely different. There's no rules about punctuation, grammar, spelling. You can approach it however you like, and it's to give you that sort of freedom. So because you've only got 50 words, obviously you can use shortenings and acronyms and anything like that, anything you want to do. So anyway, so here are some pieces of thumbnail nature. So Paul is a friend of mine who has been at some of our previous workshops, and this is what he wrote. Violinic in your viridescence, you are vibrancy. Dancing notes of glassy colour lift the veil on a bonanza of celandines and bluebells. Your starting gun is fired. The locals wake up. African winterers reappear. Is there anything more you than the bubble and squeak of reed and sedge warblers? What I love about Paul's writing is that he puts in words that I had to look up because I wasn't sure that violinic was an actual word, but it does appear in various lists. So, but yeah, you don't, without even really knowing what he means, you get that sense and that sort of excitement of spring, and that was a piece on the theme of spring. So that was Paul. And then Elia Ali's piece of writing, which is sort of wonderfully, sort of goes from very small to massive in one short piece. Soft dawn chorus in the moments before sunrise, muted grey offset by pink blossom above, pausing to take in the beauty of another turning of the ground beneath us, spinning in that darkness. So wonderful, just go the very small sort of pink blossom right near her to that sense of the whole world turning. I loved that. It's wonderful. And then Nicola Chester, the next one. So Nicola Chester is a Guardian country diarist, and she's just published a book called On Gallows Down about the tied cottage that she and her husband live in. She's a wonderful writer. She's absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, she's the queen of thumbnail nature. And she very sweetly sort of says nice things about my thumbnail nature too, which always makes me feel slightly giddy. But anyway, so this is Nicola, who always finds new ways of looking at things. Intoxicating, heady, lilac-scented May nights. Beyond the garden gate, watch the barn owl safely stop in its oak and turn its face to me. And Maybugs, cockchafers, flying up from the earth beneath my feet, with unwieldy Chinook-style zoomy blunders, want to stay out all night. And what I like about her writing, she often features in it. It's about her and her relationship to nature, and not everybody does that, so it's just a different way of doing it, and one that you are free to do. So the next one is written by Lily Kay. So swifts. Sonar slicing pierces ears, oil-slick dolphins, scythe circuitous, silver-streaked sky, precise lines, an architect's drawing, all sleek, crisp and clear and clean. No bleed, no smudge. Dozen, distant, get further away, swift spirals, studding skies, unsynchronized. Together, still, never still. I have a feeling there's another line that I can't see under my screen sharing thing, but apologies if I've missed the last line of that, Lily. So there's completely different approaches to short nature writing, and we're going to be doing some short nature writing in a moment. But one thing I just wanted to flag, while I was pulling this together, I started thinking about purple prose, which is one of those really annoying expressions that people come up with. So the idea of purple prose, it dates back, I think, probably to Romans actually, but it was the idea of using so many adjectives and adverbs and descriptive language that you completely lose the reader and they get confused about what you're actually writing about. But I found this rather wonderful example of purple prose explaining itself, and there's probably a special language word for that, which is just, but anyway, so purple prose, wherein the writing becomes much more florid, eschewing quotidian sentences for elaborate concatenation of phrases and clauses. On occasion, such racks of ornament can be despicable, with the scintillating adjectives bewildering the reader and obfuscating the subject. I just thought it was a rather fun way of looking at purple prose. So it's all about balance, isn't it? So what you'd hope to do is somehow steer a path in your writing between expressing your passion and your exuberance and excitement in what you're writing about, but not slipping over into what people call purple prose, so that you lose the reader, because it's all about how the reader perceives your writing. So just those are some things to think about. What we're going to have a go doing now is to think back to the pre-workshop activity, which I'm hoping as many of you as possible had a chance to do. So what I asked you to do is to find something in nature that you thought was beautiful, take a photograph or make a recording or whatever was appropriate, and I want you to think about that thing that you found now. If for any reason you didn't get a chance to do it, don't worry. What I would suggest doing is have a quick search for a photograph or something natural that will inspire you enough to have a go at this exercise, and you can always spend some time in nature afterwards and try it again if you would like to. So what I'm going to ask you to do for this next exercise is to write on the theme of the beauty of nature. So the idea is to write with passion and irrepressible delight in the natural beauty you found, or to look at or listen to. What I'd ask you to do is please don't edit your writing as you go along. So at this point, we're not saying I'm only going to write 50 words. I want you to keep writing, get everything down that comes to your mind in a sort of stream of consciousness way. So try to get at least 100 words down if you can, and then we're going to spend some time afterwards editing and polishing. So at this point, no editing, only because you'll get to the point, otherwise you've only got one sentence at the end of it, and I've seen that happen before. So you're going to have about 15 minutes to do this, and I will once again, as I did last time, I'll give you a sort of 1-minute warning at the end, but we will be picking this up and reworking on it, so don't worry too much if you know you had other things you wanted to say. Okay, so once again, I'm going to mute myself and leave you to have a go at that piece of writing. So over to you. You have about a minute left. Okay. So hopefully you had the opportunity to get most of what you wanted to say down. And as I said, don't worry, because we're going to return to that. But just we're going to have a little break in the meantime. But just before we leave that, I mean, if Chris Packham wasn't enough to convince you, or David Bellamy, if you're my age, wasn't enough to convince you that naturalists get very excited about nature, and that's absolutely fine, and that their excitement is infectious. Some of the younger naturalists are very much in that vein as well. And these are three that I follow on Twitter who write fabulously about the nature that they see and go and look for. So Kabir Kaul, who's very much an all-round conservationist who lives in London. Josh Stiles, amazing botanist, so he's in his early 20s. He gets excited about all sorts of plants, but also can write very excitedly about rust fungus that he finds on plants as well. So he's amazing man, and has a huge amount of knowledge at a very young age. And then lastly, the fabulous Lucy Lapwing, who's also an all-round naturalist and gets very excited about everything she sees. But it's hard to listen to people like that without finding it infectious, I find. So right, then what we're going to do next, just to have a little bit of breather from writing. So this is a very hot topic at the moment, or very topical in nature writing. The idea that, you know, whether or not you need to know about nature to be able to write about it. So there's this one hand people say, no, absolutely not. You can go out and enjoy nature, and that's fabulous, and you don't need to know the names of things, etc. And then on the other hand, there are people who are saying, well, okay, but when you start looking at nature, you might not know anything, but surely if you find nature exciting over time, you will find out about it, and you'll want to know what that thing was you just saw. So there's two sort of schools of thought. And I just, you know, as a little sort of thought exercise, I tried two bits of writing and was thinking about how they might be different from both sides. So what I guess I'm interested in is, what's the difference between reading A, which is a large bird of prey circled above me, wings splayed, escaping the unwanted pestering from some smaller birds, and then B, a buzzard circled above me, flight feathers splayed, surfing the thermals in its efforts to escape overly attentive parakeets. So one has names in, one doesn't. In fact, the first one is very similar to a very successful nature writing book, which I shan't name, but talks a lot about large birds of prey. They pop up in this book, and every time the writer mentions them, I kept thinking, but what was it? I wanted to know what it was. But anyway, is that just me? And I'd be really interested to know what you all think. I'm going to pull you out so I can see you all now. There you all are. How lovely. And I'd love to know what you think. So do unmute yourselves. If you have a view and you'd like to share it with everybody, try the little hand up thing, and I'll try and make sure I can see you all, so I can see who's got their hand up. So what do you think? Do you think people need to know about nature, or is that not important if you're a great writer? So Julian, what do you think?
Hi Amanda. Yeah, I think that the second piece of writing there is much better. I do like the detail of the species, because I think it's just relevant, helpful to understand exactly what's going on.
Absolutely. Well, obviously I'm in that camp as well. Thea, what do you think?
I'm the same. It gives me a better picture of what the writer is trying to convey.
Rhonda? Oh, where have you gone? Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Okay, I'm on both camps. It depends. I've written in broader terms about lying under the trees and what it feels like to feel the ground under you and the trees above you and the wind whispering through them. There's no need to know what types of birds are singing in the background. It's the atmosphere that I'm writing about in that case. But when I write about the garden, I want to know the names of the flowers. It gives me a closer connection in a different way. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different feeling.
So a bit of both.
I like both. Yes.
Yeah, advocating for both. Helen, what do you think? And hi, Helen. I can see the top of your head, but that's it.
Right. Well, you're not missing much. Perpetual bad hair days. But anyway, that's a digression. I was just liking it to I'm going slightly off a tangent away from nature writing, and a more sort of general thing is that it's good to have specific names. Yes, I think Rhonda sort of convinced me of, one, there is room for both, but if you are talking about, I think, a specific scene, and I can always remember I was watching something on Victoria Wood, and was saying that when she wrote about biscuits, there weren't any old biscuits, there were Garibaldi or there were custard creams, and only those biscuits would do. And I think it's the same as in any kind of writing, that it's good to home in from time to time on specifics.
Great, thank you, Helen. Nicola, what do you think? Are you there? You're muted, we can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Is my video on? There we go.
It's now.
Yeah. Yes, I probably am in both camps. I do like to know what things are. That's me personally. And I don't think for other people to access nature, they need to know what everything is. They need to be able to perhaps get some enjoyment and see beauty for what it is, or see things that are interesting for what they are. And sometimes I almost think, why do I go out there always wanting to identify everything? And sometimes I really want to try and stop myself doing that, to see if I can really get that feel of what it's all like and get the whole atmosphere.
Thank you. Right, one last one, Kieran.
Hello, I actually prefer the first one because it's about not having the details and just being able to enjoy the scene. I do look up at the sky a lot, and I have to say, unless you've got binoculars, sometimes it's really difficult to identify which bird of prey is out there. So I actually prefer A to B.
Good point.
On this occasion.
Well, that was a really nice set of different views. If I could ask you all to mute again, if you wouldn't mind, that's brilliant. But yeah, as I guessed, there'll be quite a good range of views there. But I think it's one of those things about being conscious of it. So it's something that you can use in your writing if you wish. And it's one of the things I'm going to ask you to do now. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to go back and look at the exercise 2 writing that you've produced. Begin the process of editing and polishing it. So what we're aiming for is a 50-word piece of thumbnail nature. Now, because this is the first time I've run this workshop, the timing hasn't quite worked out how I was hoping. So you've actually got about 10 minutes to do this rather than 20 minutes. But the idea was to take it away and do some further polishing anyway. So I'm hoping that's not going to be a problem for you. But what I'm after you doing is, as we've said, communicating passion while avoiding the violet verbiage, purple prose, etc. Think about being nature specific if you want to, so at least be consciously doing it or not doing it as works for you. And then the idea is to edit it down so that the final piece is no more than 50 words, including a title if you want a title, which best capture your delight in the beauty of your subject matter. So you've got 10 minutes to do that. So we're going to be finishing about, well, just after 10 to 8 to do that, and I'll give you a minute's warning. So see how far you get with that. You've just got just over a minute to tidy up the bit you're working on. Okay, so if I can ask you to pause at that point, that would be brilliant. So I'm going to slightly reorder what we do now, just in the finishing off bit. So what I want to do is to have the chance to hear some of what you've been writing. But I think what I'm going to do is just do the sort of tidying up end bit. So if anybody has to finish on the dot of 8 o'clock, you won't have missed anything. So we'll do this bit first and then go back and talk about sharing. So in terms of what we've talked about, the sort of takeaways from today's session, tips for compelling nature writing. Obviously they're my tips, you can throw them away, do whatever you like with them. Nature writing doesn't have to be about beauty, but when the beauty of nature makes your heart sing, revel in writing about it. Try to be nature specific, although we've heard good arguments for why you don't always need to be, but both with language and identification. So sometimes the language thing is it means just using more precise language perhaps, so it doesn't have to be knowing the names of things. And then finally, those of you poor folk who've been to lots of my sessions before, you've heard this so many times, it probably goes in one ear and out the other, but in terms of as a writer and somebody who writes for a living, I have estimated that I spend about a third of my time doing the initial writing, that kind of stream of consciousness stuff, and twice as much time, 2/3 of my time, editing and polishing it. And that's to make sure that when you do submit something to that finicky editor, that they are completely satisfied with it. So, and that's the only way that I can function, by doing that sort of balance. And just finally, so following this, if you would like to, do give your 50 words, including the title, a final polish, and if you'd like it to be considered for inclusion in an online anthology that I would put on my blog and then tweet it and advertise it to try and get other people to read it, then do please email it to me at that email address, amanda.tuke.writes@gmail.com, before this Monday. I'm running this session again tomorrow morning, so it'd be nice to put the two of them together. If you have photos you'd like to include with that would be lovely too. I'd love to see the photos as well. So that's entirely up to you, but it's just a nice way of kind of rounding off what you've been doing. If you don't want to do that at all I would ask is whatever you have written today, do share it with at least one other person. There's something about putting your baby, your writing out into the world and letting somebody see it. So somebody that you trust, do share it with them. Thanks very much for joining me today, and I hope you'll consider signing up for more of the workshops in this series. But this is not the ending, because as I said, I'm hoping that some of you can be persuaded to share what you've been writing. So either exercise 1, writing passionately about something, the beauty of something that people wouldn't normally think was beautiful, or maybe a phrase or a few sentences from what you've been writing now. All I would ask is that you keep it relatively short so we can hear as many as possible. People have got their hands up already. I'm assuming that you do want them up, and they've not just stayed up from last time. So double check if your hand is up and you don't want to. Helen, I think yours has been up for a while, so you might want to. Just so I don't keep picking on you. But it'd be lovely to hear from some new people. How about Deborah? Would you like to share something with us?
Hello. Right. Yes. If it's okay, I'll share the 50 words because I can read it quickly. My passion for the purple parasite grows each time I make the short annual journey to admire the luscious, plump beauty of its glossy, two-lipped purple flowers, skulking at ground level, its subterranean roots feasting on willow. My eyes scour the ground. There it is. The perfect purple parasite is reborn once more.
Wonderful. And how clever to get purple in there as well.
Well, I thought of your purple prose, but my photo is of the purple toothwort, so that it was
which
deliberate.
is a wonderful plant. Yes, absolutely. Definitely something to get excited about. Geraldine, how about you?
I don't know if you can see the picture. I'll turn my screen round.
Oh, yes, just I think.
Just about. So, in ancient times, the land split, filled with water that smoothed the rocks, carved the niches that striped the land, and housed generations on its shores, and grew their crops until the waters rose, pushing violently to expand. Shore dwellers now nervously wait to see who will be victorious, land or sea.
Oh, very impressive to end with a rhyme as well in that short time. So where is the place we're looking at?
Well, we're arguing about that at the moment. I'm saying it's Ullapool
Okay.
in northern Scotland. My husband differs.
Well, you're the writer, so I think you trump it, don't you, really?
It's Ullapool.
Thank you, Geraldine.
It's Ullapool, yeah.
Lynette, well, how about you?
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute. Between the sloops of algae made pink by fallen blossom, the little grebe approaches. White dab-chick cheeks, bright curious eyes, he sits a moment. He dives, sparkling with speed, he disappears beneath the surface to reappear away across the water.
Wonderful. I love dab-chicks. They're fabulous birds, aren't they? With unfeasibly small babies. Wonderful. So, who else? So have we got anybody else who hasn't already read? I don't think so. So, Julian, did you want to share yours?
Yeah, thanks. This is the 50-word one. If I gave it a title, it'd be over 50 words. I've not given it a title, so you'll have to guess what it is. Ghost white sphere proudly aloft. Leonardo designed a mathematical perfection. Innumerable florets thrust out on needle-thin stalks. Each holds an impossible secret, the seed of the next generation. Pick one. The stalk yields with a mighty pop. Trace the head against your cheek. Whisper soft. You too have been seduced by beauty.
Sounds great. I don't know what it is, though.
It's a dandelion hedge that's
Oh.
gone into seed.
And it's just amazing how many are there at the moment. I don't know the
Incredible. I've never seen so many.
no,
A little patch of land just by our house, that's a wasteland, is absolutely covered in yellow, and then a few days later in these lovely
They went
heads.
whoosh, didn't they? Yeah. I did hear that somebody was saying that they'd seen someone hoovering up dandelions on a verge.
Really?
Who'd have thought? I know. You despair, don't you? Rhonda. Thank you, Julian.
I think I might have edited my 50-word one too much, but we'll give it a shot. Deeply focused on the drawing of an owl appearing underneath my pen, A joyful sound breaks through my concentration. I revel in it. A house finch, one of the smallest urban birds on the Canadian prairies, is serenading us. I revel in the exuberance of its huge calls, its song spreading through the neighborhood.
Fab. So are you in the Canadian prairies as we speak?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And actually, I recorded this bird just a few days before I got your email for this workshop.
Perfect. How fortuitous. So I think last one, Nicola.
Okay, right, I'll do my 50 word, well, not quite 50 words. Right. White beam, genus Sorbus, street tree, my local tree. Startlingly white, they rove across the hillsides, marking old boundaries. Smooth grey bark, frothy flowers, red berries, golden autumn crown. It both conjures as Anglo-Saxons knew a good tree.
Fab. Like the history in there as well.
Mm.
So that was what a wonderful range of different things we heard from you all. So that's great. I'm always, like all these things, I'm always amazed that people have managed to write so much in such a short time. Those of you who are up for sharing, for sending it to be considered for the anthology, what I would say is don't send it, if you can bear to, don't send it straight after this workshop. Have a look at it either tomorrow or Sunday and have a just fresh eyes. There's something about leaving it, sleeping on it and having another look. Check that every word is absolutely essential. Have a last polish, but it would be lovely to see as many as possible, but don't feel bad if you're not up for it on this occasion. So it's been a great pleasure seeing and speaking to you all. I hope you've enjoyed it and have a lovely rest of your evening. So thank you very much, and I shall say goodbye at that point. So bye everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.